After months and months of stalling for time, the above-average-sized den decided to T-bone the video game world with the announcement of Super Mario 3D All-Stars, which you obviously already knew about if you're watching this video. But while most people seem to be pretty happy with this game, there are a good handful of naysayers out there who've said quite a few things about the compilation that hurt its dang feelings, so at the risk of sounding like a Nintendo fan man, I'm here to tell all these bullies to just leave the dang kid alone. So sit back in your favorite thing or whatever, press the subscribe button if you haven't already, and allow me, Hong Kong, Connecticut's cutest potassium exporter Cameronalloneword, to tell you why you should stop complaining about Super Mario 3D All-Stars. Alright, so the main complaints I've been seeing going around these here interwebs in regards to Super Mario 3D All-Stars are all centered around the fact that Super Mario 64 isn't even in widescreen, and honestly, yeah, this is definitely something that would have made the game a lot cooler, and I don't really know why Nintendo went through the trouble to do this for Sunshine and Galaxy but not 64, but be that as it may, I hardly see this as being any kind of a deal breaker. For some reason, a lot of people like comparing 3D All-Stars to games like the Resident Evil 2 and Final Fantasy VII remakes and called Nintendo lazy, but anyone with half a brain can tell you that those are two totally unfair comparisons to make, seeing as how those were actually complete remakes from the ground up as opposed to being remasters like 3D All-Stars. But to be fair though, there is something to the argument that the Crash and Spyro trilogies offer an ass hair more value. A lot of people consider those to be remakes as well, but even though they reworked all the graphics and sound from the ground up while adding a few bonuses here and there, I still consider those to be remasters, because the base mechanics and gameplay were left untouched for better or worse. But still though, when you compare the amount of effort that was put into those games for a $40 price tag versus the $60 price tag of 3D All-Stars, it is pretty reasonable to feel like Nintendo's phoning it in. But even though it would have been nice for Nintendo to redo the graphics for Mario 64, or at least convert it into widescreen, there isn't really that much that could have been done to improve Galaxy or even Sunshine outside of remastering them into high definition. I mean, Spyro and Crash look way better in the remastered trilogies than they did on the PlayStation 1, no doubt about it, but it's not like they're miles ahead of the remasters for Sunshine or Galaxy, so I think it's a matter of if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and if you're not gonna upgrade the graphics for 2/3 of the collection, then it'd be kinda silly to rebuild all the visuals in Mario 64, especially when most people either don't care or even prefer the original graphics for nostalgic purposes. Besides, think about what else Activision's doing these days outside of remasters compared to all the stuff Nintendo's probably working on right now. I mean, do you really want games like Breath of the Wild 2 or a brand new Steel Diver being delayed just so Mario 64 could look a little bit prettier? Again, I'd have preferred it if Nintendo had converted the game into widescreen since they went through the trouble to do it for Sunshine and Galaxy, but the GameCube and Wii were already playable in HD TVs, whereas the 64 never was, so I'm not gonna lose any sleep over it, and when I look at the other game compilations or even Classic Edition consoles that use borders on the screen, I don't really get how it's such a big deal breaker for some people. Like, yeah, $40 for remasters that went the extra mile in reworking all the graphics versus $60 for remasters that are more or less just copy and pasted does seem like kind of a ripoff, but just because Activision chose to do the extra work doesn't mean that every game being re-released from this point forward has to as well, otherwise we probably wouldn't have even gotten a 3D All-Stars at all, and honestly, while I love Crash and Spyro as much as the next full-grown man, I don't think they're in the same league as any of the Mario games in the 3D All-Stars compilation, and I might be shooting myself in the foot for assuming this before 3D All-Stars is even a release, but I'd bet money that the physical cartridge is actually gonna at least come with all three games and not need some lame-ass download, but even if it doesn't, I still think these three Mario games are way better than the Crash and Spyro trilogies. Duke on me all over the comments for saying that if you must, but even though Mario 64 was already sold on the Wii and Wii U for $10, I'm sure Nintendo would have probably sold Sunshine and Galaxy for $20 each if they would have gotten their own standalone releases on the Switch. Or, you know, they could have been a full $60 each like Wind Waker and Twilight Princess were on the Wii U, but that's neither here nor there. So if you toss all three of these Mario games into a limited compilation and add a music player and probably a cool menu or something like that, then meh, I'm a happy camper. And sure, it would have been way cooler if Mario Galaxy 2 were on here, especially since the first Mario All-Stars had 4 games, but even if Galaxy 2 were included, it'd still be missing Mario 3D Land from the 3DS, as well as the new Super Mario Bros. Games, the Super Mario Land series on the Game Boy, and the Mario Advance games. And I mean, yeah, the compilation had ripped all kinds of ass if all those titles made the cut, like how the Metal Gear Solid compilation from a few years back had pretty much every game in the entire series, but just because there's some compilations out there that went that far, it doesn't mean that every compilation from this point forward needs to go just as far just to be considered fair. I mean, just look at how much Marvel movie collections cost compared to movie collections like Time Cop, and I'm not saying that Metal Gear Solid isn't up to the same standards as the Mario games, because that franchise is friggin' great. All I'm saying is that different companies aren't always going to sell the same amount of content and compilations for the same prices, and seeing as how the game's already selling out the ass and lighting the internet on fire, I'd say that the majority of people out there agree with me in thinking that Super Mario 3D All-Stars being $60 is just fine. It's not the greatest deal in the history of video games or anything like that, but it's also far from being the worst, since all three of these games are going to keep you busy for a lot longer than Super Mario 3D World will, which is a singular game that's being re-released on the Switch for $60, although to be fair, there is going to be some extra content added in. And look, I know Wii U ports usually get heat for being $60, but even though most people are happy with 3D All-Stars, it's still getting a little bit more heat than any other game Nintendo's decided to re-release as of late. And if you fall into the camp of people who think 60's unfair, then obviously you have the right to that opinion, but all I'm saying is that it's lame for you to try to ruin it for other people when all you gotta do is just simply not buy it and use your money on other games instead, especially with 2 new consoles arriving to the party. I mean, just look at these bad boys. Why are you gonna make fun of Mario? Go hang out with them. They look pretty fun. Or, you know, you could just be like me and hang out with both. I don't know. I mean, I don't think Pokemon Sword and Shield are worth $60 based on all the information I know about those games, but I also went out of my way to defend people who still decided to buy and play those games regardless of how much better I think they could have been, because at the end of the day, pretty much every game that's ever been made could have been better, and the way I decide whether or not a game's a ripoff isn't necessarily by comparing them to other games that were $60, but rather by whether or not a game's simply worth $60. Man, the Final Fantasy VII Remake's just one part out of who knows how many that's only got about an eighth of the story that the original game had, but at the end of the day, I've been playing it for over 35 hours, which is a lot longer than it took for me to 100% Yoshi's Crafted World, which is a game that I still thought was worth $60. So yeah, if the Final Fantasy VII Remake had the full story of the original game with around 200 to 300 hours of gameplay for just $60, it would have obviously been way better. But honestly, I've had a blast for the 35 plus hours I've been playing this game, so I'm not gonna complain, and in the time it takes me to play through Mario 64, Mario Sunshine, and Mario Galaxy, I'd say that 60's pretty fair, even if Mario 64 is not in widescreen for whatever reason, despite the fact that there were a few compilations in the past that offered more value. There's also plenty of people who aren't happy about the fact that the game's only going to be sold for a few months, but I kind of consider that to be an entirely different kind of complaint altogether, which is why I've dedicated an entire video towards that specific issue that I'll link in the comments and end slate. But anyway, what do you think? Are you disappointed in Nintendo for not making 3D All-Stars better, or do you think it's good enough as it is and would rather Nintendo just use that effort to get something new out? Either way, let me know what you think in the comments down below, and as always, I'll try my goddamnedest to respond to everybody at some point. But let me tell you, if there's 2 human beings who are so good that they don't need to be converted into widescreen, then it would definitely be today's patrons of the day, Noah Linger and John Polish Impossible to Say. If you want to be badasses like these two, then consider supporting FU Game Crew on Patreon for loot boxes and silly rewards in the mail. Send pictures or videos of you rocking merch if you want to make cameos in my videos, and follow me on Twitch if you ever want to hang out whenever I play video games sometimes. My name's Cameronalloneword, and I'll see you next time.
So I want to say thank you to your loyalty, thank you for your support.